Welcome to the final panel today of the Cleveland International Film Festival, Cleveland State University Filmmakers panel. My name is John Vorlis. I am an instructor in the program here at Cleveland State in the film school, which will soon be its own film school. I mean, technically it is now, but we will be moving down the street, and we're all super excited about that. And so thank you all for coming. This panel is called, and I'm going to get this correct, Local Heroes, the Importance of Regional Filmmaking. As a regional filmmaker myself, I can tell you how the world has so much changed in filmmaking today that it's almost everything is regional filmmaking now, even if you're in Hollywood. And the panel's we're going to basically focus on how, even though there's a perception, even still among filmmakers, that Hollywood is the center of the world, more and more, especially in the last, I would say, 10 years, regional filmmaking has really taken off. There was always regional filmmakers out there. Richard Linklatter comes to mind. Jim Jarmusch comes to mind, though Jarmusch's region shifts around a lot. But in the last probably 10 years, you've seen more successful films that had almost no connection to Hollywood whatsoever, except possibly in the distribution of the films. So today we're very lucky to have 4 outstanding filmmakers, and let me just triple check my little list here because I don't want to get anybody's name wrong. I won't get your name wrong. Our first guest is, it's John, right? It's John Psathas, my fellow Greek. John is here with a film called Boy Band.
Bernadette.
Bernadette. I knew I was going to mess that up. 2 B's.
We both
and a
have
Bob
comedies,
Ryland,
though,
and
yeah.
I'm in deep trouble. It's all B's up here, by the way, so except for me. And you are originally from Ohio?
Yes, yes.
And are you currently in Ohio?
No, I'm now in Chicago.
Chicago.
Yep.
At DePaul.
At DePaul. I
Yeah.
teach at DePaul in their School of Cinematic Arts.
Another film professor, yes.
Yep.
Next to John is my good friend, our former student, and now our local hero, Robert Ryland. Robert has a film at the festival called Tripped Up, a documentary, a really great turnout. They sold out 2 screens and opened a 3rd, which is tremendous. We will grill you about what it's like to leave Cleveland State and walk into the shark pool of filmmaking.
I just hope I have good answers. Am I being graded on this? Because
You are.
whenever I walk in the stream, I feel like I'm going to be graded.
Bob wanted to sit down there just because he's more comfortable down there, but we wouldn't let him. Next to Bob are you guys brothers?
We are.
The Levinson brothers, ladies
That's
and
it.
gentlemen. Josh and Steven.
Pretty close-ish. It starts with J. I'm Joel.
Joel
That's
and
okay.
Steven.
Yeah.
You forgive me.
That's okay.
If I got it that right, my students know that it takes me like 8 to 10 weeks to get their names down.
I call him Josh half the time, so we're good.
J and S, right? Then I can't get in trouble. Or the Levinson brothers. And you guys are also Ohio filmmakers, yes?
Yes.
And are you based in Dayton?
So we're from Dayton, and I live in Yellow Springs now.
Which is right outside of
Yeah,
Dayton.
which is sort of between Dayton and Columbus.
And your brother lives?
I'm in Brooklyn now.
Brooklyn. Oh, hardcore. Brooklyn. And you're here with a film called Bernadette.
Close.
Boy band.
Boy band.
Jesus.
That's all right. I assume there's editing happening. We'll just flop it around.
This is going out live.
Oh, great. Yes.
That's okay. 'Cause
So we are Joel and Steven Levinson. We made a film called Boy Band in Dayton and Yellow Springs, Ohio. And yes,
And
it's premiering here at the Cleveland Film Festival.
yes, and your film has
Oh, shit. I should have said it's premiering here at the Wabash Film Festival.
tonight.
Because then,
Tonight, right?
tonight, yes, right after this panel, we're going to head over there.
Literally, they're going to be
And,
beamed out of here at 4:45
Very
because,
exciting.
yeah, we'll talk about what it's like to premiere films at film festivals. But thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate
Thank
it,
you.
all of you. Let's give them a quick round of applause before we get started. So most of you, I am assuming, are from the local area, and I'm assuming you're interested in film and filmmaking. And it might be nice to know that you can actually make successful films here in Ohio. And having 4 filmmakers up here who are proving that point, I think, should give you all a lot of inspiration. Let's start with the Levinsons. What was your experience? Why Ohio, and what was your experience shooting here?
So, to rewind a little bit, for a decade I was living in Los Angeles and making branded digital stuff, and I still do. I make a living making branded digital stuff, and we had a goal of making a film that was a feature so we could show people what our sense of humor looked like when it wasn't just in 2 or 3 minute segments. And we have a bit of a weird sense of humor. And so getting somebody to buy into the idea of, like the traditional Hollywood path of making a movie is very specific. It is taking a script and getting an actor attached who already has a quote that's high enough that it warrants a big enough budget for a movie, that you get you try to hand your script to whatever way you can get it to 15 different people, each of whom charge $10 million to be in a movie so that you can make a movie that costs $50 million to make. And it's a long path, and it's only successful for things that look like properties that have already been made, if that makes sense, right? That's why you see things, because no studio executive wants to risk their butt on something that's like a brand new, weird movie. What they want is something that's like, oh, now it's, now it's Beverly Hills Cop, but with a dog. Now it's Beverly Hills Cop, but with a camel. And then that's it. Oh, it's Beverly Hills Cop, but it's in Canada. And so what we wanted to make was a bit weird. So, and to make that movie, eventually, after sort of banging our heads against the wall in Los Angeles, the thought was to come back to Ohio, and to be close to where we have family, and to raise kids here, and to move out of Los Angeles, and see if there wasn't a better way to make a movie here in Ohio, and see if this wasn't a better place to make a film. And it turned out in every way to be. With the single exception of that we had comedians that we loved from, Steven's been in New York for 20 years, I was there with him for a couple years, and I've been in LA for, a decade or whatever. And so there were comedians that we loved who we knew we wanted this to be about. And so it was a matter of all the production happened in Ohio, and then bringing in the comedians that we thought were the perfect people for the roles for 2 weeks so we could shoot it.
And how was that process? Was it easy to convince them to come out here?
Do you want to answer this, or do you want me to?
It was easy. Yeah, they had fun in Dayton. It was fun showing off our hometown to these people we admired and knew from New York or LA.
Yeah, you're trying to basically sell summer camp. I mean, you're selling them on, hey, listen, they're used to going places to film things.
Right.
And then we have a Marriott. They can stay at a hotel. There's food. So it's just a matter of saying, it's a matter of getting them into the material, like it was with anything else. So they like the material, so they were.
And they come to Dayton. They're movie stars. They're the stars. Like we did in the local comedy. They're all stand-ups.
Mm-hmm.
So one night at the local comedy club, we did a show just with our cast, and it was a great comedy show because these guys are all top comics. So
do you want to drop some names?
Sure. The movie stars. So Steve Agee, Jordan Carlos, Dave Hill, and Seth Herzog as the boy band. Most of them are like. You would have seen them on At Midnight. Steve Agee was on Sarah Silverman program and in Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like well-regarded comedians who get small to medium character actor parts and never have a movie that they could star in and hang their hat on. And our theory was if we can make the movie cheap enough, we don't have to have an actor who makes $10 million, because then if we can make the movie so cheap, we can make our money back without having to, have a massive theatrical run. And then we can give the movie to the comedians who we think are the best for the role, and who will also put their hearts into it. And so that was the sort of theory behind it, and that's what we did. So those guys are in it, and then we have cameos and guest appearances from Jerry O'Connell and Questlove, and the voice of Gilbert Godfrey.
Nice. Well, congratulations on getting it made. Mr. Psathas,
Yeah.
happy Easter.
Happy Greek Easter, yeah.
Tell us about your experience filming. And you are originally a Cleveland State student, am I correct about this?
I did attend classes at Cleveland State for a little bit.
You matriculated?
At Ohio State.
Ah.
So right down the road.
Yes.
I went to the College of Worcester for a minute too, and then Cleveland State.
You decided to sample
I
them
moved
all.
around. Yeah, I moved around a little bit.
So what was your experiences filming in Cleveland? Did you want to film here? Was the movie designed to film here, or did you feel like this was somehow advantageous to the production to shoot here?
So I and a surprising amount of our cast and crew have Cleveland roots and Ohio roots. A lot of our key crew members and cast members have had films that played at Cleveland International before, and so that's where the majority of our connection to Cleveland stems from. But at the end of the day, we're all independent filmmakers, and what's kind of unique about our story is it's very much about localized filmmaking, Midwestern filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
That the principle that you guys were discussing, where you just go outside of a major city and the world opens up to the independent filmmaker, and I cannot stress this enough. I've, as a professor at DePaul, I go and we have a program that's pretty interesting. It's called Project Blue Light, and we take students in a class, and they get to work in positions with local professionals on these short films over the summer. And occasionally we will go on location, and it'll be farther out into the suburbs or even farther out into western Illinois, right?
Yeah.
And you'll show up in a town with a camera, and you are Hollywood. You are the movies. And so you ask for, do you mind if we use your diner? Absolutely, come on in. Do you want to come into the back? Do you want us to leave? We'll cook you meals. They'll give you anything you want.
Have you worked in LA?
Yeah, I have been out in LA. I've worked out in LA. It's not like that anymore.
I want to piggyback off
Yeah.
this because there was a moment
Yeah.
So I was living in Culver City and
Which is in LA.
which is in LA and it's sort of down the street from Sony. It's like it's where the Wizard of Oz was made.
Yes.
So we're a couple blocks away from the police station, and I make these videos for the internet, right? Branded stuff for the internet. And I had a budget. It was kind of small. It was for something I was going to shoot, and I was like, hey, this will be a great chance for me to learn the permitting process, because I will just go through this and I'll do it by the book and I'll get the permit. It'll be great. I walked down to the police
To
station.
shoot in your front lawn. Your
Oh,
own
yeah,
front
I'm
lawn.
getting
Your
there.
own
Yes,
front lawn.
to
Yeah,
shoot
yeah.
in my own front lawn, right? So
In Los Angeles.
yeah. And so I walked down. I was like, "This is great. I'm a professional filmmaker. I'm gonna get the permit. It's gonna be awesome." And I walked in and I said, "Hey, I would like to get a permit to shoot here." And he was like, "Okay, well, that's good. That's great. All you're gonna need is the paperwork, and you just need this officer there. And are you gonna shut down the street?" I said, "No, we're not gonna shut down the street. You're gonna shut down the sidewalk? Nope, we won't be anywhere near the sidewalk. It's just gonna be on our front lawn." And he's like, "Oh, okay, so that'll be $5,600 to start with, and that's for 8-hour day." I was like, "Oh, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, to put a camera on your own front lawn and spend $5,600 before you even get the camera
To legally
Yeah.
film.
to legally film." In the meantime, in Dayton, Ohio, you can print out a permit in 2 seconds. You can shut down streets if you want to. You can get if you need an auto body shop, you just call a
up
guy
there,
with an
right?
auto body
Yeah.
shop.
And the thing about being an independent filmmaker is it's always going to be about some level of compromise. There's going to be a compromise inherent to the struggle that you're going to face in making your movie. You're going to have to make a choice. And so this is the type of choice where, yes, it may be harder to get to. You may have to bring people out, but the benefits completely outweigh those cons. So in that small town that we went to, we had a character in the script that was a police officer. So we go and we ask the small town if we can, do you have an extra police officer's uniform? Guy's like, absolutely, take mine. Here, do you want our police car? You can have it.
You want me?
Yeah.
I'm available.
The mayor of the town, who also was a waitress in that diner, gave us her car, right, to use for another character. I mean, it was that kind of acceptance. They wanted to be a part of the film because for them, they were a part of the team, right? They became part of our story. And so I can't agree with you enough, because in LA, it's the type of situation where everybody knows what you're up to. As soon as you break out that camera, somebody will turn on their lawnmower.
Yeah.
And
Or
it's just
there's
like
leaf blower.
or the leaf blower, and just stand there until you send over somebody to take care of that problem and pay that off. And it's not a yes. It's just a series of hurdles.
So, but there's a thought to it, which is assuming that many of you will try to make films here, or have made films, or will make films here. And the thing is that then you have to, whatever you get, you have to take advantage of. So the fact that you went to the easy answer sometimes is, well, we'll just shoot in this person's house. Well, you can shoot that scene of two people talking about whether the relationship should go in the house, or you can go the extra mile and take advantage of the fact that you can get a diner in this town. And the key is to take advantage of. So if what you have access to is locations and props and freedom of movement, then if you're making a movie in the Midwest, then that's what the movie has to somehow be about. It has to be that those become additional pieces of the movie that you can hang its hat on, so that you can say, hey, look at this production value we got out of X and Y scenes that we never could have gotten in New York or LA or Seattle. And making and drawing people's eyeballs to it and attention to it and excitement for the movie from that.
And both of your films have an Ohio vibe. I mean, they have a Midwest vibe that really, I mean, you're not going to find that in Los Angeles. You're going to have to create that in Los Angeles. Here you can walk out anywhere and find that. And I think that's one of the big advantages of shooting regionally is if your story fits that world, why not shoot in that world? Why fake it when you can get the real thing with down to the details that you couldn't even imagine, like a small town police officer's uniform. It's probably a little different from the NYPD's uniform, and so I mean those are small things, but the details really make the movie, and it's fun to hear that you guys really took advantage of that. Now we got Bob sitting in the middle here, who sort of, in some ways, did the complete opposite of what everyone here did.
Yes, I did.
Bob is a Cleveland-based filmmaker who decided to go travel the world to make a documentary.
I didn't decide to. It was more like, hey, there's this cool story about a local guy by the name of Steve Balkin, Clevelander through and through. And
Legendary family.
Legend, yes. And he runs this crazy trip to Europe every summer, and it's like 2 weeks, and it's like, hey, it's surprise destinations, it's very a la Amazing Race, and there's a competition aspect to it. And the director, Laura, who's a longtime friend through the festival, she's like, hey, I've done this competition a handful of times, and I think it'd be a cool story for a documentary. You want to come? And I was like, well, I've got a passport, and I've been looking for an excuse to quit my day job. So yeah, I'll go to Europe with you for a couple weeks, and we'll shoot this thing. But we did come back to Cleveland. We shot a handful of interviews here as well. But
and all the post-production done.
Post-production handled in her lovely home out in Bay Village, and my lovely shack of an office in Parma. Yeah, but all that was handled here.
Cleveland.
Authentic. The sound was all done here by a couple of very, very talented sound engineers, composers, and they're just out in Euclid. So there's a ton of stuff right here. You just have to know where to look and who to ask, honestly.
And which brings me to an interesting question. In Los Angeles, it's not hard to find crew. In fact, the waiter, the waitress, everybody, your neighbor. What was both of you guys' experience, all three of you, on Cleveland crew, on Ohio crew? Was it hard to find or easy?
So so I make my living making film stuff. So I use that to find crew. So I use projects, ongoing smaller projects, so that I knew by the time I was ready to make my film who are the people who I like to work with. But I really think the difference is not whether or not you can find a qualified DP. It's that instead of 500 DPs who are qualified to choose from, you're choosing from 5. Right. So scheduling becomes slightly more complicated if there's like one, but that it is anyway. If there's one person you want to work with, and you have to work around their schedule. But it's just a smaller pool, but it's easier to know that smaller pool because it doesn't take long to figure out who are the people who you think do good work and who you can work with.
And your experience?
I'm the odd person out, certainly in this particular group when it comes to how crew, bringing crew onto Burnett. So, I've done plenty of other short films, commercial work, things like that, where we do hire a lot of local professionals based out of Chicago, especially since, we have CineSpace studios there with stages for a lot of shows and things like that. And so we have plenty of connections there, but as a faculty member at the university, I pitched Bernadette as a 3-part course. So I took students that were sophomores that had limited film experience, and with another faculty member, we did 3 courses sequentially. So a pre-production class where we went through and found local actors, cast, and we went through and found all of our locations together.
Did you know at the time you were going to shoot in Ohio?
No, we shot in Chicago.
We
shot in Chicago.
So
I have the Ohio connection. A lot of our actors, a lot of our crew actually are interestingly enough, those students were from Ohio, went to DePaul.
There's an Ohio diaspora amongst filmmakers. I
Totally.
mean, how long, you lived in LA for 10 years?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, I was out there for 20, and I would say 90% of my friends were Midwestern,
Right, exactly.
just because I could understand where they were coming from.
It's a Midwestern work ethic.
Yeah,
it's kind of what it was about. And so we had a lot of those students, and we took them, through pre-production every step of the way, trained them for these roles, and then they were in key positions. It was like, guess what? You're the AC today. You're the AD. We've been talking about this. We trained through this. You're up. So sure, we busted a few takes, and like it took a little longer to get our shots and make some of our days, but we did. And by the end of the 6 weeks that we shot this film, they were carved out of wood, and then all of those students moved on. And now, since they've graduated, we shot this in the summer of 2015. They've graduated and they're all working professionals now. This was the kind of like the first crack for them. Our editor was a sophomore, and worked really closely with him. And then by the time he was finished, he's now he's working professionally in a post house in the city, and it's just like that's the kind of thing he got under his belt. So when it comes to crew, you're right. The world's your oyster in a sense. You end up picking from these areas that you can work with and the people you can work with. And there are plenty of people in Ohio. There are plenty of people in these smaller areas, that want to be independent filmmakers and work with you too. It's about finding them.
You also could get cheaper people because for everybody in Southwest Ohio, I mean, when the big crew comes in to shoot Carol, they're not hiring local for their heads of department.
No.
So everybody wants a better credit. Everybody wants to prove that they were the first AD on a film, and so they're happier to work for less and put in more heart to get that credit because that's what it is. So our movie was made up of a lot of people who have been on some films, but for the most part are commercial, working commercial crew who are bouncing around Southwest Ohio on commercial stuff.
Did you produce the film yourself, both of you?
Let's say ish.
Did you bring in
We had producers, Wes and Kathleen Hartshorn.
Were they Ohio based?
Yeah,
They also lived in LA and moved back to Ohio to do film.
That's the most important thing I would ever do.
Sounds like a common theme among them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it makes sense to ever hire a producer who is not local.
Yeah.
Of all the positions, the idea of hiring a producer who is not local, because a non-local producer cannot get you all the free stuff that you need to make a movie on any budget, much less a low budget,
And it was amazing the doors they opened.
Really?
The locations they even we did a photo shoot in this like historic arcade. They knew who to call to just get us in there.
Who connected you to them?
Did you meet them?
Carrie.
We have
Carrie
a
O'Reilly.
mutual friend, very successful. She started as a UPM AD all the way. And
Now line
she's-
producer for everything that
Yeah.
comes to Ohio.
And she's based in Dayton and does a lot of good. If you want to film in Ohio, you call Carrie, and we'll talk about some of the business logistics of shooting in Ohio, but that's an interesting.
Yeah, so it was just, she knew Wes and Kathleen. They had done a lot of reality stuff when it comes to Ohio. They said they're anxious to, produce a
Step
feature
up,
film.
yeah.
Here we go. You'd be a good partner. You're both in the same sort of boat, trying to push it forward. And that's the whole thing, is that you'd rather find somebody who has slightly less experience and more energy for a project that is going to take longer than you want it to,
Right.
than somebody who's amazing but is going to drop out before the finish line.
Right.
So.
Bob, you do a lot of freelance work
Yes,
here in Cleveland.
I do.
What, being on the other side of the fence when filmmakers come in to make films, producers come to
Yeah.
crew films, what's your experience? Is it, do you feel like you have to upsell yourself, or is it?
No, a lot of times I'll let my work speak for itself. So I've put together what I like to think is a very nice reel over
It
the
is good.
Thank you. Over the
I've
past
seen it.
several years from a variety of projects, documentary work, that's kind of my bread and butter now.
Yeah.
But a lot of music videos, brand films, that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
it's very eclectic, it's very me. And I let that speak for itself. And here's the thing, I know not every director, I know not every producer, everybody is going to want me.
Right.
And I accept that.
Yeah.
But I know that if they're looking for a certain style, or maybe it's the package I'm running, that's fine. I'm more than happy to have those conversations. And it's a lot of conversations that you have to have with people, and it's all about relationships. That's the other thing I can't speak enough. In community, especially with Ohio, you really need to not be afraid to take a call at 10 o'clock at night. Have a cup of coffee even though you don't need the caffeine. It's all those little things, and talk to people. And social media, I mean, I know I'm a little bit younger than everybody up here, but...
What's social media?
Social media, what's this thing?
What's the internet?
Thanks, Mark Zuckerberg.
Like internet?
The internet. What is,
You mean your Friendster account? Is that
MySpace.
even
I
that's
had
too
one
old
of
a
those.
reference, isn't it? Yeah.
But my MySpace page is blowing up these days
Yeah,
with people
it's
wanting to
fine
work
over
with me. But yeah, it's a lot of things with social media. That's how I stay connected with a lot of guys I went to school with, guys and girls, I should say, because
Yes.
it's
They're
in
everywhere now.
Cleveland. It's amazing. We have a great pool to work with, and it's not just a man's world anymore, which is really nice.
No, that is very impressive.
I just want to throw a thought out. Are any of you writers? Writers? Yeah. So here's what I would say this. Like, so when you're coming from, when you're a cinematographer, you can have physical stuff that shows what you do and your style, and it's a really nice way to present to an outsider, even before a conversation to lead. When you're a writer, it's a really hard thing to get people to read your stuff. So what we've found is that, so you know how like with a jazz musician, this could be the best bassist in the world, but you probably don't know a lot of jazz musicians' names, but people would be like, hey, this guy played with Miles Davis. And then you're like, oh well, he must be good. He played, that's how you sell a jazz musician when they're coming to town. He played with Miles Davis and Thelonious Monk and whatever. So I think it's the same thing with writing. And what we found was very helpful for us to get people to believe that we were worth listening to is that if you do things for free and you do things for charity, you can get people who would never say yes to anything else to say yes to you. And if you can get that, then all of a sudden you get to say, I wrote for so-and-so. So whoever that person is from Cleveland, I don't know who's the biggest star that is from Cleveland at the moment. Isn't Sarah Jessica Parker or something from Cleveland? I don't know. Isn't she? Cincinnati. Who's the biggest star from Cleveland?
Halle Berry.
Halle Berry, great.
Halle Berry from Shake
So
It.
so that if you could write something that is a free thing that is entirely for a Cleveland charitable organization that has some reach and that could get to her, then that's the kind of thing that you could take out in the world, and you appeal to Halle Berry and every other Cleveland celebrity to try to get them to do this free PSA that you're just doing to raise money. You don't see a dime for it. But you're proving your street cred by getting to attach your name to them. And we found that like opened a gazillion doors, especially in the world of comedy. We were able to say, like we did it with an album, and we were able to say, hey, Will Forte did our stuff. It was, so that other comedians were like, well, it can't be terrible. if you know what I mean? So that was a big deal, and I would recommend that to, like, when you don't have a physical, I think the same thing, you know, if you're like lighting, okay, sound, okay, cinematography, okay. Some of the other things, it's more ethereal, and you have to sort of clamp a name that people can grab onto.
Right.
100%.
What do you tell your students about that whole process?
It is, you turn to the person to your left, turn to the person to your right. These are the people that you are going to see and work with, you know, for the next 10 to 15 to 20 years in this community. It's all about your reputation. It's all about those relationships, build them, you know. I still work with the same people oftentimes that I went to school with.
Yep.
And there's a shorthand. There's so much communication that needs to happen on a set, right? So many people need to be, you know, on the same page, and to be able to now have figured that shorthand out so that I can look at them, and we just look at each other, and they know exactly what I'm talking about, and that's it. It saves you time, it saves you energy. You move together as a team and as a unit. It's so much about those relationships. So just continue to foster those amongst the community of filmmakers that you're in.
100%. Just to piggyback on that, these guys had the opportunity to meet two other CSU alum today that sat with me. Joe was right there, Andrew was right there in those classes, and they still work with me today. Joe's my go-to first AC on anything that comes through, and it's that shorthand. He can look at me and be like, "You're not happy. What aren't you happy about?" And it's
You don't
he'd
have
be like,
to
I'm
vocalize
on
it.
it.
I know what it
It's
is. I
on.
know what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So it's that shorthand that you develop with the community and everybody that you go to school with, or you just work with on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Joel, is that why you work with your brother?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big one is that you can, well, you can speak to it.
I mean,
I've talked a lot.
We always say that we can be totally honest and we can fight for our opinions in a way that you don't have to worry that we're gonna have a big blow up fight, and that's gonna be the end of the project. It's never gonna be the end of the project, or it's never gonna be the end of our working relationship. So with those as ground rules, you know, we can just be really honest about how we feel.
Right. There was like, it just sounds very grandiose. There was like an erection joke argument earlier today. It was like, no, it doesn't go that way. Yes, it does. And then you got it. So it's not like it's a life or death situation here. But it is. You when you get to a joke, you all of a sudden you believe in that joke, and you have to have somebody you trust and somebody you can argue with and somebody who you can still respect after the argument.
I've sat in a room with 2 other comedians writing a script, and I'm not a comedian, and I ended up being the referee. I mean,
It's one of those.
because the comedians take their humor seriously.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't laugh at it. They analyze it until it's like dots on the page, literally. And if you're
Although if
passionate,
they're never laughing at it, it might not be that
yes, yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the logistics of Ohio. There are some reasons, some financial reasons to shoot in the state that have really, in a lot of ways, drawn a lot of production here that wouldn't have come here originally. You guys may have shot here regardless of that because of your comfort level here. Same with me, same with Bob. Your comfort level in Chicago. Talk about
We were
that.
talking about this earlier today, and I want to speak to this. I think the film tax credit is wonderful for bringing in big movies that
Right.
then give an opportunity for people to improve their skills and do exactly what I'm talking about, which is now you can say I was on Carol, or I was
Right.
on Transformers, or whatever it is.
Right.
But right now, it is not being leveraged to encourage local filmmakers to stay local and produce locally.
Yeah.
So, for example, Pittsburgh as a city exploded when they decided tech jobs can be done anywhere, so we have to create a world in which our tech entrepreneurs don't want to go to Silicon Valley because they don't have to. They can do the same things here in Pittsburgh.
Right
So
there.
we have to create a world where it's encouraging. The same thing happens with arts and culture. And people reach a certain level of arts and culture in Ohio, and often, for totally valid reasons, feel like they have to take a next step by going to a city like Chicago, like New York, like Los Angeles, because there are opportunities there that don't exist. But there's an opportunity with the way regional filmmaking is working for, if there was the energy behind it, for the Ohio Film Commission to put a small percentage of their time, energy, and money towards encouraging local filmmakers who are not yet at that $300,000 threshold or $350,000 threshold for the tax credit to say, hey, we're going to get some grants going to encourage you to stay here because we know that the filmmaker who makes the $100,000 movie this year makes the $500,000 movie next year. And if they feel like they have the better crew that they can get and the better resources in Ohio, it's a reason for them to stay here. I mean, that's the Richard Linklatter thing, right?
Yes.
He stays in Austin. He keeps making his stuff in Austin because he loves that world of Austin. But if you can create a petri dish for him and for 10 other Richard Linklatters,
Yeah.
then you create an opportunity where more people are doing that regional stuff. And I think that part is missing and needs more energy behind it.
It's the biggest challenge, I think, to convince the people in power that we don't need to bring in the Avengers, even though it would be great to, for lots of reasons. It'd be much more beneficial to Cleveland to do 10 small films, all from Cleveland filmmakers who then...
I mean, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. I think there's a ton of value in bringing in if you can bring in somebody who's making a $100 million studio movie, besides the money, the amount of experience you're bringing in with that budget is unbelievable. But it has to be balanced against trying to create. It's like it's like putting an investment portfolio. You don't put everything in stocks that are going to pay off in one day. You want some bonds that are going to be like long-term growth.
That's
you know?
a nice metaphor.
Speaking of that, I mean, I think Chicago is in a similar place. It's just slightly different. The tax break obviously is fantastic, and we've been able to, in the city, a lot of LA, New York TV shows and films will come in and use our crew and our resources because we have film schools there. We have a lot of students. But at the same time, we still suffer from the very same brain drain where those students who have some talent will then go to the coasts, to get those jobs in those places. Or when those big shows come in, they're still bringing in, key crew from LA and from New York. And it is, it's the type of thing where you need that incubator that it allows you know, those local filmmakers to continue to make movies and of course are funded, which is the biggest challenge
That's
of all,
the
right?
challenge,
Is that for all of them, we're struggling to scrape it all together. But we're halfway through. We're getting close. I feel like in Chicago we're getting closer with it, but it's still. I would agree it's not.
I
there.
can tell you from knowing the people that run, especially the Greater Cleveland Film Commission, that is a long-term goal. I just think it should be a short-term goal as well. And we were going to have one of them on the panel here, but he actually has a film at the film festival, so he wasn't able to make it. He could have spoken to that. Bob, let me ask you, because these guys are hiring crew, you are crew, and
Well, I'd like
filmmaking.
to kind of chip on
Why
what these
aren't
guys
you
were
leaving?
saying. Why am I not leaving?
Yeah.
Well, I love Cleveland. I'm a Midwest guy.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have a chip on my shoulder. And I think that's definitely a lot that these guys are kind of talking about. There's great talent here,
Mm-hmm.
but bringing in the big stuff, it's cool because you can learn a lot from those guys, which is fantastic. But you need the mix. You need that mixed portfolio of everything that comes through. Because granted, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to be first AC on Avengers 12 when it rolls through Cleveland again. Maybe I will. By the time they hit that point, I might. But you know, you need both. You need the big stuff. You need the little stuff because you're going to learn a lot. You're going to be able to take that wealth of knowledge to a small, nice, tight, little independent production and make it shine.
Yeah.
And I want to hear your question now.
My question, the question was why not leave Cleveland? And
Why not leave Cleveland?
The pressure
That's real easy.
is real. I deal with this with students every day.
My real reason for not leaving Cleveland, I'd much rather stay in Cleveland and be a larger fish and be a marketable commodity that somebody wants to hire, as opposed to going to New York, LA, Atlanta, Chicago, and being just another guy with a camera that just has a nice flashy reel. I mean, I'll be able to eat, and I probably won't be eating ramen noodles every day, but I have a nice life here, and it's fun, and it's growing, and I see it. I don't know if I see the finish line yet, but it's a lot. It's moved up definitely in the past couple years, opposed to when I graduated or when I even started college here.
Yeah, the very idea of having a local heroes sidebar, 25 years ago in Cleveland would have been kind of
It would have been tough.
pie in the sky, Pollyannish. It's not a problem today.
It's been the Russos.
I mean,
Thanks, Russo
just
brothers.
not.
It's just been the
You've
Russos.
got, well, even then, I mean, before they, they did a lot of their work in television. Before that, it was Welcome to Collinwood, right?
I love that movie.
And that connection really helped launch a career that's been, that has come back and paid some dividends to Cleveland. It could pay more. The question is, as a regional filmmaker, do you feel like and I'm not sure this is the right word, but maybe in the context of Hollywood it is, do you feel like you're ghettoized? Do you feel like you're looked at in the distribution world as...
This is our first feature film.
Yeah.
I'll tell you in 6 months. I have no idea how they're going to look at it. My hope is that I don't think I've seen. I have no idea.
I can tell you my experience, but I want to hear yours too, and I will chime in. John, what do you? Yes, no.
It's interesting. The one thing I realize is I'm very much from the Midwest. Gone out to LA, done a few things, but like when you go out there, it's they're from no place.
No one in LA is from LA.
Right, and everybody comes from there, but it's just like, oh, you live in Chicago. You don't go here. You make your own films.
What's wrong?
Why would you do that? And in a way, I mean, I understand the value of it. It's the idea, right? This is the biggest challenge for every student I talk to.
Yeah.
They say, well, that's where they make movies. That's where they make TV shows. Shouldn't I go there? That's where I can get that job because there's a million of those jobs. And they're right on some level, but then on the other level, you will be climbing that ladder, and it may not go exactly
climbed
where,
over,
or climbed, and it may not be you get on one rung, not realizing it's not leading you where you necessarily want to go as a storyteller.
Yeah.
Right?
I would change that language in some way because I think 15 years ago, yes, it was where they were making that stuff, but now it's not. Because they're making it so. It's really about that's where the people.
Who decide?
It's where the people who decide what gets made and where the
deciders.
people who star in what gets made.
True.
So and I don't think I really don't think that when you start to do the equation that it is, I mean, this is what we're betting on. We'll see what happens, like I said, but we're betting that it's more cost effective to make a movie where you can get the people you want from New York or Los Angeles who have the whatever face and try to get them here because they're looking to do movies still.
Yeah.
They want to do movies, not just their, if you can get somebody who's doing TV and get them excited about a movie, I think, I don't know, we'll see.
I'll tell you what my experience was, because a year ago I was on this panel, but sitting where you guys are, being interviewed about a film that I had at the festival, a documentary, and Bob was interviewing me there, and Bob actually did some shooting on it. And it's a small Cleveland story, very small, that has a sort of larger themes about family and tradition, and it's a bocce documentary, and not even everybody knows what bocce is. And I made the film really to make a film, because I'm a filmmaker, and that itch just will never go away, and I'm sure you all know what that feels like. And the film turned out to be successful. At the festival, it was a huge success, and I thought, well, maybe this isn't just a regional film. Maybe I should take this film to my LA contacts and see what they could do with it, not expecting anything to happen with it. And lo and behold, I got distribution, worldwide distribution, and I got all the platforms distributed, and no one, not a single person to me said, "Oh, you made that movie in Cleveland." They could care less. They really didn't care at all. All they cared about was, could they sell it?
Yeah.
Could they market it?
Right.
Was there somebody who was going to watch this film and pay money for it? And I think that's the best lesson for independent filmmakers, is to have a little bit of faith that if something speaks to you, like your stories all spoke to you in some way, that it's going to speak to a larger audience. And if you can make that film somewhere where you feel really comfortable, it's going to be a better film. If you had made that film in LA, do you think it would have been as good a film as the film you made in Ohio?
No, we considered it. We were close at one point, and no, I think that's the best decision I made, was not to do that.
Do you agree with your brother?
Oh, absolutely. I remember the phone conversation where someone was encouraging
Why
us to-
shoot it there?
to
yeah.
shoot it in LA because the crew will be better.
Yeah.
And they were acting like, what
What
are
are
you,
you,
amateurs?
yeah.
Like, of course you should. First of all, you're definitely going to shoot in LA. And we had like a real heart-to-heart where it was a big, like really big decision. And it was so, we both like, when we landed on Dayton, we were just like, it was so obviously the right decision for us.
Yeah. And now, on the other side of the finish line with the movie done, you still feel the same
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, no regrets.
I want to, we have, so like, I think the best example of it, it was our movie, so our movie is the story of a boy band that got old and fat, and mostly it takes place when they've run out of money and have one day left to finish an album that they hope will return them to glory. So it is a one crazy night kind of movie, because that's how you make a cheap movie. And so most of it takes place in a recording studio. But we were like, have to put a couple things in that make it look more expensive. So we got the Dayton Art Institute, who have one Monet, to let us shoot at the Dayton Art Institute in front of the Monet. I do not know another indie film that has a $150 million prop in the background. And it looks amazing.
If you'd have tried to do that
In
LA,
Los
you
Angeles,
would've
I
never
would have,
got-
I would have gotten
New York, you would have been
And
arrested.
I was on the
Out
ground below
everywhere.
the guy holding the boom pole, just being like, do not
Don't
dip
hit
anything in
Monet.
your face.
Get away from the Monet.
Because if you destroy it, that's our whole budget.
Gone. All the insurance. Done.
What about you? Is that your same experience? Are you happy to have shot the film where you shot
I
it?
would never have shot it anywhere else. I couldn't even imagine doing it anywhere else. For us, it very much is, as an indie filmmaker, it's about the resources you have available, what you can get done, how you can do it, and the suburbs of Chicago. Since this movie is very much an homage to those 80s movies,
John
80s
Hughes.
John
Are you
Hughes
all
coming of
influenced
age.
by John Hughes? Is that
I would say no.
no?
Yeah.
Not that I don't like
No,
John.
yeah. No, I mean,
we'll
so,
talk about
yeah.
influences.
Yeah.
For us, it was very much about like the DP guy I went to school with, produced with, wrote with.
Yeah.
Our whole story was, I just remember these movies from when I was a kid. I'm not seeing any, I love coming of age, but everything seems to involve there's death or a werewolf or something supernatural, and
Yeah,
like
we've lost the realism.
it's battle royale. It's like it's not just like, oh my god, I'm heartbroken, you know, or oh my god, I'm so in love, I'm paralyzed, or that guy's a horrible.
it's a love story.
And it's a love story. It's a story about, you know, 15-year-old kid, first love, first heartbreak. You know, summer before the internet. That's what it is. It takes place in 1994. So we were able to just hit up all of the suburbs in the Chicago area, you know, knowing that they were, you know, these are movies that spoke to them because all of those films took place in that same area. So we'd go in and we'd say, hey, we're you know, making this movie. We're a tiny little crew. And they'd say, of course, come on in. You can use this pool. You can use this park district. You can use this basketball court. You can use all this stuff. And so we have this whole world that we created out of just, you know, pieces from here and there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Who are your influences? Are you influenced by regional filmmakers, or?
I don't know of any comedy movies that we watched growing up that were made regionally. I just don't think that was a thing that I saw. I mean, for me, it's what, you know, story-wise, it's Zucker brothers, Zucker Abrams and Zucker stuff,
Right.
and they weren't making Hot Shots in, you
No.
know, wherever. But that's our hope with this, is to like try to prove that we could do it and to make a big silly comedy like that, or like a Mel Brooks story. I said, like, you know, like a Mel Brooks story on a Kevin Smith early budget, you know. And we'll see. I mean,
But we talked about Groundhog Day a lot.
yeah.
That was
Yeah.
like a big influence.
That,
mean that
that's a
feels
Hollywood
regional?
film that
Yeah.
feels like a regional film, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, listen, I'm sure that the vast majority of the people in that world, besides the 26 main characters, are people who
Right.
came from that world. You know,
Sure,
it
of
feels like
course.
it's a small town
Yeah.
world, and
Yeah.
and it's the best movie ever made, so it's got
It's-
that going for it.
Terrific
Yeah.
film. Bob, what's your influences?
I wish I had some regional stuff, but unfortunately, I really can't speak of anything. But I mean, director-wise, I mean, I grew up on Spielberg. Jurassic
Yeah.
Park, Jaws will
Yeah.
always have a special place in my heart.
And yet you make documentaries.
And don't worry about what I make now.
Yeah.
John. We'll talk about what I make later. In that regard, I would be remiss if I didn't say I also had a narrative short that I DP'd that was also in the late
Yeah,
night
you were
shorts.
a busy man this year.
Yeah, no, it's been exhausting. But no, I do narrative stuff as well. But Spielberg, Edgar Wright, more recently with some stuff. I mean, Shaun of the Dead, if depending on what day of the week, is probably my favorite movie. I can pick it up anywhere
Love
and
it.
just do that.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm a cinematographer, so I mean, Deakins comes to mind.
Oh, yeah.
Dean Cundy, of course, and I mean, there's just so many fun stuff out there that it's hard to pinpoint one down, honestly.
When you were making Tripped Up,
Yeah.
did you have something in mind that did you have a reference point that you were trying to, or was it
No,
so
no, it
out
was
there?
so out there with what we were trying to do. Honestly, I mean, we looked around at a lot of other docs, and it's like, well, you know, and then of course, like, Amazing Race is the one thing that comes to mind when you kind of watch it. And I'm like, no, the exact opposite is what I want. I don't want reality TV. I don't want to play these characters up.
Yeah.
So we try to do it, and a lot of choices that were made were like, well, they shoot on big ENG cameras. I'm like, no, we're not doing broadcast cameras. We shot the whole thing on SLRs with prime lenses.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nope, we're going to do it like that. It's going to help make the look a little bit better, in my opinion.
It did.
Thank you. But yeah, no, there really wasn't anything that stuck out other than, like, obviously just all the docs that I'd watched growing up, you know, a lot of stuff here. But more recently, stuff like Chef's Table. I get a lot of stuff from, like,
Yeah.
that. So, I mean, that just stuff, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's...
Let's start down there and work our way this way again. Film festivals, they have, I would say again, in the last 15, 20 years, played a huge part in this whole regionalization of filmmaking, because you get to see, as a film audience, films that normally would never come to your multiplex, and unless you're an obsessive Netflixer like me, you might not even look for these films. How do you feel about film festivals?
I will speak to this by starting with the apology that we have to leave here in a minute because we have to go to our movie premiering over there
yeah.
shortly. Boy Band at 5:30. If you can make it over there, you're welcome to. But that's the first feature we've made and this is the only film festival we've been to, and everything else that Steven and I write has been, Steven is a monologue writer for The Tonight Show. I don't think that was in his intro, but he's writing stuff that then it's not like he's always getting to see a big thing and see how an audience reacts to it and do that. Right. And when we've done digital stuff, it's sitting online somewhere and you don't get to see how the audience reacts to it. So we won't know until about 2 hours from now how it feels to be at a film festival or how it feels to have jokes like that play at a film festival. So always just luck. We'll see.
You're going to have a blast.
I think it should be fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Hope they laugh.
Yeah.
They will. Definitely. Bob, what was it like the first night you screened here?
The real opinion?
I'll give you mine. But
No, well, we ran into some technical issues like 23 hours before the premiere that we thought we solved, but it caused another issue that happened during the premiere. But honestly, it was amazing being able to just share it with regionally. I mean, my family came out. My uncle came out, who he was messaging me on Facebook. He's like, "Hey, how do I get tickets? Your film's on standby." I'm like, I don't know, scalp him, I guess. But he wound up getting some tickets. He came down. It was awesome to see him out there. And just like folks that I haven't seen in a while came out. And it's really, I mean, Midwest, you hear it a lot. But it's truly humbling when you get to go and screen it to a bunch of family and friends. And I mean, I hope you guys...
I hope they show up. Yeah, here we go.
Hopefully they
got one of them out there.
Yeah, that's it.
But it was awesome. And once we got all the tech issues taken care of, it was really cool, and I'm excited to get to go and screen it again tomorrow, oddly enough, so it'll be awesome.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with you guys. Tonight is our first night. We're screening.
Got first timers here, people.
Yeah, this is my first feature as well, and so this is 8:40 tonight. We've got our world premiere, and then we've got a couple screenings tomorrow afternoon too. So I'll let you know. Yeah, tonight. Like I feel like it'll be.
I will text you.
I would say break a leg, but it was already broken months
I
ago.
broke it way back.
Now you just have to
my
see
heart,
like
legs, everything. Broke
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's open it up to questions since the Levinsons have to leave in a couple minutes. Questions? Yes, right here.
Timing in terms of when a picture is released, does that ever come into your conversation in terms of, or is it just, okay, we've got this movie completed, let's just get it out there?
So I think timing would make a lot of sense to come in if you're building around the tentpole of the year. So for example, if you're building a Christmas, that's obvious, but I think there's a lot of other simple things that you could anchor into to make it more, to give it a little bit more pop, to get people to be excited about it, whether it's a July 4th movie or a Memorial Day movie or a Flag Day movie. I think there's a lot of like hooks that you can add to a movie which would be useful for release. But at this stage for us, the question was about wanting to have it premiere in Ohio around the state that the people who supported making it in the first place, so that it was sort of, it was just a matter of can we get it done in time to get it to Cleveland.
For the festival?
For the festival.
I'd say we were definitely in the same boat. I mean, we were right up until the 11th hour, and even during the festival, making changes to it to make sure it was ready to go. We had Cleveland as a target because we're from here, but beyond that, I'd say if you're going to look for a release, definitely look for what type of movie it is, and definitely what festivals themselves screen those movies. You don't want to make a doc and send it to a festival that screens a lot of horror movies, unless your movie's about horror, documentary about horror films, because otherwise you're just wasting your time and money, honestly.
Yeah. I'd say, one of the biggest lessons is that, the movie ends up being done when it's done. That's the plans for schedules, and we did. This is going to be our targeted date, and this is going to be our plan, and everything just took longer, of course, because you're an indie filmmaker, you're doing everything yourself, you're doing it on your own, it just took longer. At the end of the day, Cleveland was very much the same way, one of our targeted places. We had so many of our cast and crew are from Ohio, from Cleveland, I am, so if we want to go there, we want to be there. We're thankful that we're here, and that was part of it. But unless it is, I feel like we're talking distribution and finances and like trying to make all of that money back theatrically that weekend doesn't necessarily play a huge factor for us.
With one exception, if you know that you can get Matt Damon to show up at a screening and you have it on June 13th, then you make everything happen so that it's done on June 13th. If there's a human being whose name can do everything you need it to for the movie, and you can get a hold of that human being, and in any way use them to help your marketing, then you bend space and time to make that happen. And that means, and I would literally, if you knew you could get Matt Damon to show up at your opening and get a picture of him standing in front of your poster, I would cut out a scene of the movie that you think is important so that you could get it there, because it's just as much business as it is, if you want to make more. If you only want to make that one movie, then you make the exact movie you want. But if you want to make more, then I think you try to make it successful.
Did you guys target Cleveland because of the Ohio?
You mean the festival?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is the best festival that there could be in Ohio. So it's like this is where our sort of I think our marketing story and angle is that, and we got a piece of Newsweek coverage while we were in production, and we were like, that's right. If they think it's a national story and a way to do that, then we need to put everything we can to make it sound like that is our angle, and try to get any press we can out of that angle. And for us, that means Cleveland Film Festival makes more sense than New York.
Talk about that. How did you get that kind of publicity on basically a small film?
We had a Kickstarter that happened. We raised 90% of the money from investors. We had a Kickstarter to do the last 10%. And I'm sorry that I'm speaking fast. We'll take off after this. But so we had a Kickstarter to raise the last 10% after we already knew we had enough money for the movie. So that the Kickstarter was just going to be crazy.
Right.
And at that time, we just did our reach to everybody we could and anywhere we could reach. Every friend we ever had, whoever knew anybody, whoever wrote anywhere, and said, here's what we need to do. We do it. And we got one person who was interested in it from Newsweek. He's a freelance writer. He had written stuff for lots of places. And he said, oh, that's interesting. And we were so excited. We were like, great. Can you get that story out next week while the Kickstarter's still going? And there was absolutely no chance. But 3.5 months later, the story was ready to go. And it changes sort of. It's like, it's just proving that we are legit, I think, in a new place. Yeah.
It's probably the hardest thing for an independent and regional film to do is to get some kind of national publicity, whether it's reviews, whether it's any of that.
Yep. That's the big challenge we're facing down, and hoping we have some shots at it. But anyway, thank you very much for having us. We're going to go right.
How do you make the transition, being a college graduate to studying film, coming into the professional workplace? Because I really appreciate my last stuff you guys talking about this, kind of coming from a place where you guys have been doing it for a little while. So kind of, how did you make that transition when you were fresh out of school, fresh out of taking
I can speak to both sides. I'm sure you can.
Oh yeah. All right. So when I left college, I continued to have a day job. Luckily, I was fortunate to have a job that they understood that my passion didn't lie in what they were selling. So I told them right up, I was like, hey, look, I'm going to be taking time off to do side work. And I kept doing that. I did that from when I graduated in 2012 all the way up until May of 2015 when I was like, hey, look, it's time to take lunch and just go for it. And I had enough body work, I had enough money set aside too. That's the other thing. My wife, Maria, thank you. She definitely pushed me to do it. Having a support system was very important. But beyond that, I stand by all of my work. And I think that's the one thing that I can say is make sure that what you do is you're proud of and you're proud to show other people, because if you take pride in your work and your clients see that, whether your clients are your cousin who hired you to shoot their wedding, or a friend of a friend of a friend who hired you to do a little spot for their business or shoot their Kickstarter campaign because they want to do something fun and exciting. Take pride in it, and that will get you to go further. Or you can do what I did and just buy a camera and be like, hey, I have a camera. You want to shoot something? I can do it for like pizza or $20. Or when I was of age, a 6-pound beer. So, and not the day before I was of age.
No, I speaking to that specifically, yeah. I did this, called this person, and applied to this one spot, and I was hooked up, and it was over. And I was able to walk away and say, I'm a filmmaker now. The one thing that I always talk about is just, as I try to say, look, you're going to get opportunities are going to show up, and say yes to every single one of them. Always say yes until you know when to say no. And there'll be some voice in your head going, man, this sounds too good to be true. This sounds like, this sounds kind of crazy, but I don't know, and it's an opportunity, and I'm going to do it. And then the more experience you have, you'll realize, yeah, I can see why I should have turned that job down, right?
Yeah.
But I did it, I went through it, I'm stronger for it, and I got this to show for it. And the experience itself is the kind of thing you build up that wealth of experience, that work that you can stand by, and that's when you know it's I've done it. I've made those decisions and those choices. So to make that next step is scary. Every day students ask me, what am I going to do next week? Graduate in June, what am I going to do? And I'm going to do exactly what you've been doing. You're going to keep making films, you're going to keep telling your stories, you're going to keep working at it, and it will fall into place. It's just, you're going to get there your own way.
Yes, it might take 6 weeks, it might take 6 months, it might take 6 years to get there. But I can tell you one thing that's benefited me recently is writing everything down and just logging things and understanding that you're going to run into an issue, and you can reference that and be like, oh, that's how I solved that issue, or oh, this is that same guy calling me again, but he changed his number. It's still the same guy. Exactly. So you can go and definitely write things down, because that definitely helps. If you're trying to do the freelance game, which is what I do, if you're going to try and go and hop on board with network or try and go work in a studio, unfortunately, I can't speak to that. But
Do you have a question over here?
Yeah, this is sort of an extension of that same question. Now that you guys are established filmmakers that are sitting on panels, experts in your field, can you talk about some of the commercial work that you might do that's your bread and butter that pays your bills while you work on these passion projects where the payoff may be down the line or never?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the one thing in that same way where there's no sure shot or sure path, it'll just be something. You get a phone call from somebody you went to school with, somebody you work with all the time. They're like, something came up and we've got this spot that we need a producer on, a director on. You have an English background, so I was doing this. I was helping out a friend who has a series on Netflix through some producers, and it's Arabic language. And the doctor that wrote them wanted to do. He wanted to do everything twice, in Arabic and in English. He's not a native English speaker. And so my friend called me up, who we'd worked together many times. He's the director himself, and he just said, I know that you got your undergrad in English. This doctor, because you're at university, he would love for you to be here, and just say exactly what I'm saying, but in English. And that's exactly what happened. But it's just these connections, these family members, these friends. You find yourself into these spots, and then you just have them in your reel. So it's like, well, we did this thing for Aussie. Somebody sees it, and they're like, oh, well, we got this little thing for Nike. Do you want to do that? Sure. And you just say yes because you obviously want to keep working and keep getting those things out there.
I mean, for me, the bread and butter as it is really doing a lot of corporate video. And I know corporate video is not the most glamorous thing in the world, but I like to build my set. I say I'm a cinematographer, but I refer myself as a visual storyteller. So you have a company or a brand, and you're like, oh, we want to go and we want to use video to leverage something. Cool, you can hit me up and we can have a conversation over a cup of coffee or email or FaceTime, whatever, and maybe I'm a good fit for you. But really, I'm going out there, I'm trying to help, and I have a stable of really fun clients that routinely call me, and they're the ones that you just say yes to. And it's, hey, we need to do this thing, and maybe it's only going to be a minute-long thing, or hey, we're trying to do like a 15-second spot thing, or hey, we've got an event that we just need to put a little bit more light on. Could you come down and help us out? And it's like, absolutely. You just get that stable of clients. It's like you just say yes to until the point where you can't say yes to them, which thankfully I haven't hit yet. But maybe it'll happen.
And then when you can't say yes, they say, why can't you say yes? And you say, I just can't. Right now, we can't afford it or whatever. And then that's when it moves to that next level.
That next level, or that buddy, that community that you have, because it's important to have the community. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, look, I can't do it.
But I know somebody who can.
Exactly. And that's the best feeling in the world, when you can recommend a friend to go and do a job for you and have full, complete confidence on both sides that the client's going to be happy and that your buddy's going to knock it out of the park.
And then, I also teach full time, like at school. So that's like, it's this weird, it's a crazy balance. Every quarter classes, students, and then side project on the weekend. My wife is infinitely patient and understanding, and so it's that it's that balance you're just constantly juggling.
100%.
And so
Have a life. Other questions? Yeah.
Okay, so to follow up on these previous questions, I just wanted to know, did you guys have a plan? Did you plan on staying in Cleveland, or after you guys got out of school, did you want to, move somewhere else because, there was bigger productions and more money involved, or what made you want to stay here in Cleveland?
I mean, for me, Cleveland's home, and I mean, clearly with my documentary, I traveled around the world. But
literally.
But no, Cleveland's home for me, and I discovered early on, kind of in those transition years right out of college before I went full-time freelance, that I can make a living doing it. And I like to say I'm not eating ramen. I only eat ramen noodles when I want to, which is like the best feeling in the world. But yeah, I always want to stay in Cleveland. There's enough of a market here for me to carve out, what I want to do. I would love to. I've already shot around the world, I guess, but I'd love to work globally, but still be Cleveland-based. And I think that's the most important thing for me. Maybe it's Midwest, maybe it's the chip on my shoulder or whatever, but I definitely want to remain in Cleveland, or at least be based in Cleveland, and be able to work.
There's that Midwest pride, right? It's
Yeah.
just like there's this
100%.
Midwest pride that you're just like, nope, not going to do it. And so the people that I work with, men and women in Chicago. So I left Ohio because I met my wife who lived in Chicago. And so that's how I ended up there. And then, through film there in Chicago and film school, ended up staying there, right? My family's all from Cleveland, so I come back. But the reason we talk about this all the time is like, well, how come you guys didn't leave? You were here, 10 years ago in Chicago working on this stuff. And a lot of people left in that bit of time. Why not? And our attitude was always the same as we've been discussing, which is, why would I? Why would I leave? This is my home. I think we can do all these things here. We can tell all these stories here. We just have to, it's that independent filmmaker compromise. How am I going to tell it here? I can stay here. I can do this.
Exactly. And I've known a lot of guys, sorry to cut you off, John, but I've known a lot of guys that have gone to they've tried to move to the coast. They've tried to go to Austin. They've tried to go to Atlanta. And then I see them in the bar 6 months later. I'm like, what happened? And they're like, well, I ran out of money and I washed out. And I'm like, well, what did you think you were going to just show up there and suddenly, oh, here's the job, thank you. You really have to work at it. You have to make a name for yourself definitely before you leave here, unless you want to go through and just get started on the ground. There's nothing wrong with that. Start on the ground at a studio and grind your way out. I just knew that wasn't for me. I don't know. The whole idea of being tied down, really.
I can speak to both sides of this because I did leave. I left to go to film school, and we should talk about film school before we finish up here. But I left to go to film school out in Los Angeles, and to me, there was this notion in my head that was it. I had done it. I'm now a filmmaker. I'm in Los Angeles studying film, right? And then I spent a lot of frustrating years trying to get projects off the ground, coming painfully close to getting something done, as anybody who's been in LA knows this experience. And I just got sick of it. I got sick of Los Angeles. I got sick of the people. And so I had reasons to come home, family reasons. And I have done more filmmaking and been happier filmmaking and more productive filmmaking in Ohio than I did in all the 20 years that I was in Los Angeles. And I wish I would have come back 10 years sooner. Now, the business was different then. Lots of things were different. But that no matter where you are, you have got to work. This is not a business where you can just show up at 9 o'clock and leave at 5 o'clock and get your benefits and it's just not that business. If that is what you need, you probably either should be in post-production or you shouldn't be in this business, because it's not a 9-to-5 business. It's like the priesthood. You get called to it, come and do it. You can't do anything else. I feel like if someone took away film, I'd be in deep,
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what to do.
I would equate it more to the mafia than the priest business, because
Well-
there's only like really one way out of this.
It's true. It's just like you get sucked in and you got to make some peace with that. You got to, it's challenging, but it doesn't matter. Like Bob said, you could go to Atlanta or New York or whatever,
Yeah.
and if you just expect that to be the solution to your I can't get work problem, you're going to fail. You have to get work. It's a hustle, and you got to hustle.
And that's the biggest advantage, I think, too, to staying, where you end up making some of those bones, in that
Exactly.
community, is because if you go and you leave, now you have to start over.
Yeah.
You have to start over and build a new community. You have to find an entire group of filmmakers. So instead of being able to make a phone call and say, you know what, this great idea and it's short, let's just go shoot it this weekend. Let's have some fun.
Exactly.
And your friends, right, who are also collaborators and professionals, she'll turn around and go, yeah, absolutely, let's do that. Why wouldn't we? That sounds like a blast. We can use my place. I'll drive, and people come together. If you have to move, you got to start and build that community all over again. And you spent years making,
Yeah, and there's filmmakers here, there's filmmakers there. Networking, as Bob said, as everyone on this panel has said, is everything. When I finished the film last year, I called my friends in Los Angeles. I said, can you do something with this, right? I had made those. And if you're young, I don't think it's such a bad thing to leave a little bit, to do a little bit of the odyssey.
No, yeah, totally.
But don't think that's going to be the solution to all your filmmaking problems.
100%.
Do it because you want to do it, because you want to challenge yourself, because you want the experience.
Because you're young.
Because you're young.
Well, yeah, you can
so
do it.
You can
then.
afford to fail. I say this a lot in class, and I say it a lot to young filmmakers, but Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times to make the light bulb. 10,000. Have you failed 10,000 times to make a movie? If you haven't, you shouldn't complain. You should go make a movie. And don't be afraid to fail. Failure is going to be your best teacher.
Exactly.
You all know this,
100%.
right?
Absolutely.
I've made tons of mistakes, and that's really, the mistakes make or break you. If you let the mistakes weigh you down and you don't take that opportunity to learn from it,
learn from them.
you're going to keep making that same mistake again, and you're going to get frustrated with yourself because you're not seeing it. And maybe you need a buddy, you need somebody in that community that can be like, no, look, dude, you're making the same mistake every time.
Yes.
Try this,
Yeah.
and it works.
Yeah. That's that critical eye, but it's just a level of honesty, right? Where you're
The brothers
together.
were talking about this.
Yeah.
Where you have this person, for example, you went to film school with Joe,
Yep.
and Joe can say to you, dude,
Yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you remember the last time you did that? And
He reminds me all the time.
oh, those friends are worth gold.
Yeah.
Other questions? Let's talk real briefly about film school, because we still have a few minutes. Regional, DePaul, Cleveland State. Not so regional. I was at USC, but I'm a teacher at Cleveland State, so I can speak a little bit to that. Tell me, what value do you place on your education?
So coming to Cleveland State, and I just want to get it off, I was on the 5-year plan here, so my BA took a little bit longer than others, but I knew that I wanted to make fun from the jump, and when I went here, we don't have this awesome new curriculum that you guys are launching, but I took a lot of stuff, basically any class I could put a camera in my hand, whether it was learning how to do multicam stuff, so that was extremely valuable, but the other side is the community, and I can't speak to that enough. I still work with a handful of guys that I labored with here for years, and we still work with each other, we still call each other, we bounce ideas off of each other, and it's, right now, NAB's going on. Hey, you see this cool thing in NAB? That's right up your alley.
Magic SLR.
That new Pocket 4K. But yeah, that's probably the two biggest takeaways is putting definitely a camera in my hands and meeting just tons of like-minded individuals, because it's tough getting out there and like networking is like, at least for me, like the scariest thing in the world.
It'd be exhausting.
And it's shaking so many hands that it's just like, if I could just go and be like, hey, I do this thing, hire me if you want. I'm much more humble that way. Like walking up to somebody and be like, hey, I'm the best person to shoot your production.
Right.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
That's something I'm still working on.
That's a skill you can learn.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you from my own experience as well that most people aren't born with that gift. Just like anything else, you have to learn it, practice it, make it a part of your experience. I went to the best film school. I mean, Evan will argue with me about this because he went to AFI, but I went to USC. And I did not learn at USC how to network. And I learned everything else about filmmaking except how to get a job in film. And I walked out the door with, you know, a diploma and they still call me up and ask me for money, and I still don't reply to their calls. Because I had to go and take a whole week out of my life and take a networking seminar because I had gotten so frustrated, you know, especially as a writer. If you're a writer, you are doubly handicapped because you're living in a hole in the ground. Right? You're a hobbit with no hobbit friends, right? And you don't come out of that hole except every 6 months to breathe, and then you go back in the hole and you write some more and some more and some more. And that's the only way you can get to be a good writer. But it's the opposite of networking. And then you realize I have to go shop this around, and I have the social skills of Cartman from South Park, right? Because I never stopped playing World of Warcraft. And it's just like anything else, it can be learned. What do you tell students
about film school?
Yeah.
So
how do you recruit them?
How do we recruit them? You know, right now, here's the thing that's kind of amazing about film school is that last 10, 15, 20 years, everything's been revolutionized. We all know this, right? The democratization of media, you turn around now, DSLR cameras, everything's so cheap. You can get a camera, you can shoot on your phone, you can do all this stuff, you can drop it in some software and shoot it out. That stuff, back in the day, you had to shoot on celluloid. You know how much that cost per foot?
That was?
Is how many places you could do that. There was a handful of schools on those coasts, and you had to get into those schools. That was the gatekeeper. The money, where they were, how much it cost, that was obliterated, right? Now that it's all digital, everybody can do it. What does that also mean? Everybody can do it, right? There's a million voices screaming. How are you going to cut through with your particular story? That's going to be the real challenge. And so when it comes to film school, I think the biggest advantage to all students is that community, right? The biggest takeaway that you're going to have is that these are other people that care just as much as you do, right? Where you love it to death and all you want to do is tell stories. Stick with them. Stick with them. Be side by side. You against the world, right? Cleveland against the world.
Yeah.
It's you against. It's you guys. You're going to make it on your own. So stick with them. And then secondly, this gives you access to all of the gear, all that stuff that it would cost you money to rent or to play with. That's the advantage, right? Yes, you will probably be in debt. I am in horrible debt. Everybody is in horrible debt probably that goes to film school for the most part. And that's part of it in that term, but I feel like you're investing in yourself, right, in terms of what you want. But at the end of the day, it's absolutely worth it because the other choice is leave without technical knowledge, without technical experience, access to gear, and then try to make a story with no community, right? No community of people that are there to lift you up and help you and catch you when you fall.
Yeah.
Bob, do you feel like you put the lessons that you learned in school into practice? Or do you feel like film school gave you, what did film school give you besides the network?
Oh, the freedom to make mistakes, and the worst thing that was going to happen is maybe I got a C on a project as opposed to like blowing somebody's budget. And I mean, the budgets that I would have been working with at that time were a couple $100. But I mean, now you talk about some major productions, and it's like, oh, if you blunder something, that's 50 grand. And it's tough to respond when you fail that bad, and they have to go back and you have to redo everything, and then it's out of pocket. It's the safety net that definitely came here that I appreciate. It's like, no, I didn't mess up. Don't care. No.
Did anybody ever ask you what your grades were when you left film school?
I don't know if I remember that. All I know is that I have a diploma.
Not that you shouldn't get good grades. Right?
Yeah, it's not that at all. You should definitely graduate, even if it takes you 5 years.
Yeah.
But no, definitely the safety net is probably one of the things that I learned.
I'm going to go to a
while here.
question
It's
from
like,
earlier
it's okay to
that
make
actually
mistakes.
fits better
And that's
now
the other
for me
thing.
too.
I know I've said it, but don't be afraid to make mistakes. 'Cause sometimes you find a cool little trick just by making a mistake, and you're like, oh, that mistake's actually going to save me 5 hours instead of costing me 10.
Right.
It does happen.
Yeah.
Not all the time, though. Not all the time.
Yeah.
A creative experimentation, right? Just trying and getting the opportunity to try something new, something you wouldn't normally do, right? We start off in film school and just as creators, right? We often start mimicking filmmakers that we already enjoy, because it's the same way if you see Picasso's early art school drawings, right? They look like Renaissance drawings. They're unbelievably realistic. They're gorgeous, right? And then he's Picasso. You see those. And starts mimicking a film, famous artists who have a style of their own until he finds his own voice and his own style. And that's exactly what you do in film school. Experiment, fail hard, and fall on your face, do it again, do it again, do it again. And then eventually you'll be so confident in what you're doing that it becomes like breathing.
Question?
We've got a question from YouTube from earlier. So this was from a previous one, but I think it fits better here. And Sharon from YouTube wanted to know, how does a film student get their foot into the door for internships and co-ops?
A film student?
Yes.
You want to take that one?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. This is a great question. You need to be, there's the other thing about it, it's sometimes there's this expectation. Other degrees, you can just walk out the door and it's like, I got this diploma, I'm a businessman. You hire me in your business company, and then I'll do business. And it's easier that way. But in a sense, for filmmakers, it's not. And I tell my filmmaking students, they're like, well, where's the list of all the available internships that I can then submit to my resume online? That's not how you need to do it. You're going to track down any company that does anything that you like. You're going to call them. You're going to try to make a connection on LinkedIn, any other way to find the individual that you're going to shadow and say, I just want the opportunity to see what you do because I want to do that. I like what you did here. I want to do that. And you're going to have to go after it. But I guarantee you, in this business, if you're that person that goes after it, that is there, that is dedicated, as a producer, director, or somebody in that business, I'm going, this kid cares. This kid wants this. Of course I want him to come along. Of course I want to show him. So they need to, it's a very proactive thing.
They really do. And I mean, I just brought in a young guy, a recent CSU grad. That wasn't the reason that I was attracted to him. It's a plus because I know that we came from his own program. But he borrowed my gear. I was kind enough to, I was like, hey, go ahead, practice with this. I know you've used it before, but it's been a while. Go ahead and take it. And when he brought it back, he dropped off. He's like, oh, hey, Bob, just want to let you know everything's good. By the way, I cleaned all of your lenses. And I'm like, oh.
You're hired.
Oh, you sat down and you took the time and you pulled out the cleaning kit and you dusted off all my lenses and checked that sensor. That's the kind of stuff. And it's make yourself memorable. If you're going to go, once you do, I don't know how to tell you to get the foot in the door, but once it's in there, that's definitely the time to show and prove yourself really hard. And I took notice.
Look for the doors, right? Before you can get your foot in the door, you got to find the door.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Maybe it's a wall and you knock on it. If somebody knocks back, maybe that's not a wall. Maybe it's a door, right? And if the door appears to be dead bolted, that doesn't mean it can't be opened. Knock on the door. If you do, you may be pleasantly surprised by the response. Internships, one of my secret passions is just to really get this internship thing wrestled to the ground, but I'm not sure there's one way to do it.
I think to kind of go with that, the other
need
Chicago,
to
you've got
network,
houses, production houses that can pull you in, and at least locally here in Cleveland, and it's the local Heroes panel, we don't have enough of that. It's very cliquey here. That's dissipating, but there's definitely a lot of things where it's like, it's tough to go and get into that production house just because there isn't a lot in Northeast Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio in general. So really the community, and not just the film community, needs to step up and be willing.
Absolutely true. Yeah. It's both sides of the coin. The students need to be more proactive, but I think the program needs to be a little more aggressive in that too. And I think we are. I think that's one of the great things about the fact that we are going to be our own school, and we don't have to necessarily run everything by people that don't understand what it means to have an internship or what it means to be a filmmaker. Hopefully that will create some opportunities that don't maybe not exist there. The other thing is, if you really want to internship, you may have to leave a little bit. You may have to go spend the summer in New York or Atlanta or Chicago or Los Angeles, because there's simply more opportunities there for internships. Really depends a lot on what you want to do and how you want to do it. I have a student now who's very excited about writing, especially comedy. And I'll tell you this story because I think it's really apropos to everything that we've been talking about. And he's funny. I've seen his films. They're funny. He still needs to learn a lot about writing, but you can see the potential is there. But what's really there is the drive. This person wants to do this. So the other day, they came to me and said, hey, my mom met someone at some event whose daughter happens to work at a major network in Los Angeles in television development. Okay, like he almost didn't realize the gold nugget that had just plopped into his hand, but it was shiny enough that he recognized that this might be something really important. And he asked my advice on how to exploit this possibility. And I said, well, the first thing to do is just introduce yourself. Just say hello, right? Because if you walk in somewhere shaking a hat, you're going to look like, frankly, the homeless person who needs desperate help. And in Hollywood, that is a turnoff. Maybe not in Cleveland, which is why we love Cleveland so much, and we are much more generous to our fellow human beings. But in Hollywood, shaking the hat is going to get you on Skid Row, not on Oscar night anywhere. And so I said, just make an introduction of yourself. Just say, right, if you got her email, send her an email, tell her who you are, tell her what you want, tell her what you're trying to do with your career, you're about to graduate. And that's all he did. And she came back and said, as soon as you come out to California, let me know, and I will connect you with X, Y, and Z, and you can shadow this writer around on that set. And she went like 10 country miles past anything he would have even imagined himself asking. And now he has an entree into a place that he probably didn't imagine he could. And it wasn't because he was the best student. He's a good student. He's a very good student. It wasn't because he went to film school. That's super helpful. It's because he had a great network, and he listened to it, and he took advantage of it, and wasn't afraid to he said, well, what if she says no? I'm like, well, who cares? There's nothing bad can happen to you, right? You'll just, if you really want this, you'll find another way in there. That door may not open, but the next one might. The next door might. For him, the first door opened. This happens a lot. The first door a lot of times will open, and you will think the world is your oyster, and the next 27 doors won't open, and you'll start to get discouraged. You can't get discouraged. You've got to remember that one door did open, and take advantage of that door. And it'll open again. The universe is not out to get you. You just keep knocking, and eventually something good will happen.
It's a long road.
Yeah, it is, and you got to be committed to it, right, Bob?
Yeah, 110%.
Yeah. And we all know the same thing.
Yeah, yes, you gotta love it more than anything. That's why you're making movies, right?
Exactly.
Because you love it more than anything. If it was about the money, you would have gone into a
You'd go to Wall
different
Street.
field. You would have gone and studied something else altogether, right? It's about the love.
That's the perfect ending to this panel.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Pleasure.
Thank you to the Levinson brothers. Thank you to all of you for coming out. We really appreciate your taking your time, and I hope we gave you a good talking to. Thank you. Give us all. Give you
Thanks for having us. Thank you for having us.